We've got Jets, Bucs, joint practice today. There's going to be some hitting going on out there. Hard knocks last night. Plenty to get into here on the show with a very special guest. Let's roll, baby. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sikkema, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. What's poppin', everybody? My name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green of the New York Jets, digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show live every single gosh darn day at 7:30. But before we get to any of the particulars, this is the first time that we've had a guest that was featured in the brand new intro on the show. So without further ado, I'm just going to lean back, hit the add to stream button, and say, Trevor, thoughts?
Dude, the intro is absolutely fire, by the way. And it is, I've never had myself be in an intro of a show in which I was about to be on. So this is a little like Inception going on here. So it's a true honor, my friend. Anytime we get to link up and get to talk some ball, it's always a great time. So I appreciate you having me on once again.
Of course. So love it. Thank God. Again, tell the people off camera, we can keep it. We can keep it. We got the approval. We got the paperwork signed. That's fantastic. So we'll keep that moving forward. Trevor, what before we get into the Jets Bucs, again, your team of choice, of course. I was surprised because, of course, I'm absorbing all the Jets content I can. I'm like, beep, boop, bop. The Jets have joint practices. And I see, let's go down to the field live with Caroline Hendershot with Trevor Sikkema. I'm like, Trevor Sikkema? What the hell? And then I see you, handsome bastard down there with Caroline is a freaking superstar. And you were giving her some observations live for joint practices. Boom! You just popped up on my screen. You just forced your way into my life, Trevor.
Yeah, so no, it was a lot of fun to be out there. I mean, right now I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Carolina Panthers, they do their joint practices. So just outside Charlotte, it's a town called Spartanburg, where Wofford College is. And so one of my communications guys at PFF, Dave Solfaro, who's the best in the business, he was like, hey, you're close to this. Jets are going to be there for joint practice. Like, do you want to cover it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I used to cover the Buccaneers many years ago, it feels like now. And that is honestly what I miss most about being a beat reporter is training camp. Like those training camp, getting to cover the entire roster, see how guys look in their first time going up against somebody new, like all of that, man. So I miss training camp and those joint practices so much. And so when I had the opportunity to go down there and cover it, I absolutely jumped at the opportunity. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of observations. It's always great seeing teams go up against one another in whether it's game or practice. But I really love these joint practice formats for training camp. I think you get to learn a lot. So it's good, man. Not too far of a drive. And so I had to make it happen.
Yeah, before we get into the Bucs stuff, I'm curious, your observations, you're right there, hot and heavy. The Jets, both that week and this week, I heard Robert Saleh explain it, they had two joint practices playing with the Panthers. They had two planned joint practices playing with the Bucs, but they canceled the second one. That was weather last week. This week, they're canceling the second one because Robert Saleh thinks that, after a joint practice, things can get pretty physical. And if the Jets or Bucs won the day, the next day they're like, we're going to give them the business this time around. And Saleh thinks that's super unproductive. So he wanted to bail on the second one. So going to the Panthers first, and feel free to comment on that ideology the Jets kind of cooked up there. I'm curious your observations. You were hot and heavy there in Carolina.
Yeah, so, when I was looking at both sides of the ball, I think for the Jets and for the Panthers, two things really stood out to me, and both it's in the trenches. I know that I'm not breaking any news here because I know you and so many others cover the team very closely, and so I think the fans know this. But first, Jets defensive line, one of the deepest in the NFL. I mean, this is a unit that's going to finish top 5 in pressure production in the league. I have to believe. Like, if these guys are healthy, they were absolutely eating the Carolina Panthers offensive line alive. And I think the Carolina's offensive line okay, maybe it's not one of the best in the NFL, but I think these guys are solid, even for the players that are out there and healthy right now. So the fact that the Jets, and it's not just like Quinn Williams who's going out there and like destroying people. Of course he was, but like Solomon Thomas, Tanzel Smart, like it was guys who are going to be rotational players that were also getting in on the pressure party or the sack party during practice. So I was super impressed with the Jets defensive line. I was when I covered the game as well, guys like Will McDonald, Gwen Jefferson, like those guys immediately standing out as well. So you could throw so many names into the mix. This is going to be one of the deepest pass rush units in the NFL, and I think that they're going to thrive there. The other side of the ball, if the offensive line doesn't get better, Jets are kind of in trouble, and they're still trying to figure it out at the offensive tackle spots. I know Mekhi Becton, Billy Turner, Max Mitchell, like those guys are in the rotation, but nobody was really able to grab the bull by the horns, if you will. And we're coming up on the last game that the Jets have in preseason. So they're running out of opportunities, and it's an issue now because they're not running out of opportunities for these guys to just like gain one of these spots. They're running out of opportunities to have faith that when they have to play one of these guys, they're going to play well enough to where it's okay. And I saw that you tweeted out the Hard Knocks clip from Robert Saleh when he was talking about after that resonates, man. I mean, I 100% agree with him. It doesn't matter who you have at quarterback, your skill position players, great running backs, whatever. If you can't win up front, that's the game of football still. And I think that it obviously always will be because of the way that it's structured. So they got to be way better up front along the offensive line. So those were my two real Jets observations. Sauce Gardner didn't practice. Garrett Wilson didn't practice, which is kind of a bummer. I wanted to see those guys go up against some really great players for the Panthers. But I think that it was a big lesson in the trenches. And I know the Jets fans are probably freaking out about it, but you'd rather learn the lesson now, right? You'd rather figure it out in training camp that, okay, maybe we're not as solid as we thought we were. We got to shuffle some things around. We got to figure some things out rather than just saying, oh yeah, we're good. Because imagine if these joint practices don't happen. Sure, you have the games, but those are kind of one-off examples. You still might be trying to fool's gold yourself going into the regular season. And I don't think that's where the Jets are. I think they realize, and certainly from the Hard Knocks clip from Saleh, they know where they're at, and they know that where they're at right now, not good enough compared to the expectations that the rest of the roster has.
So carrying off of that, again, we're speaking with Trevor "Gosh darn Sikkema, baby, here live at 7:30 in the morning. Oh, man, I'm so fired up because we got football right around the corner, which is spectacular. So we have the Bucs game coming up later this week, and then they have the Giants game the following week, and then it's over. We have this nice new break in the NFL schedule where teams kind of get to breathe. You have cutdown day, break, week off, and then all of a sudden, booyah, the season's here. In a I don't even want to say in a perfect world, like what is the bare minimum required of offensive line chemistry? Because the Jets still heading into this joint practice today with the Bucs, they do not know who their starting five is. Saleh said a couple weeks ago he wanted to know the answer to that question heading in, and he admitted yesterday he does not. So how much time do they actually need here to get ready? Because Aaron Rodgers kind of called that whole thing overrated, but it seems hard to, chemistry, you either get it or you don't, and the only way you get it is by playing together. I don't know.
Look, I'm not going to say that I know more than a future Hall of Fame quarterback because Aaron's been around this game at the highest level for a long, long time. But I think that him saying that offensive line chemistry being overrated, I feel like that's downplaying it a lot more than it needs to. Like, can you have guys come in a pinch and, say your left guard goes down in week 8 and some guy's got to come in and he comes in and he plays really well and the offensive line stays together and they stay good as a unit. Yes, like those things can happen. It's not like, oh, I haven't run with this team yet this season. That means I'll for sure be bad. It's not quite that, but you're getting to the point now where the Jets don't know who they want to start at left and right tackle. They've been flip-flopping these guys the whole time. Brown's still coming back from injury. Mekhi Becton, sometimes he looks okay, but then there are reps. Like in practice, Brian Burns got him so bad with his spin move. And then in the game, there was a little, I think it was an inside move. I can't remember who put it on him, but it was like, that can't happen, right? I know offensive linemen's jobs are really difficult. They'll play 65 snaps in a game, and if 62 of them go well and 3 of them go poorly, you have a bad day, according to a lot of people. And by those numbers, that's a really harsh judgment on a player, but it's the reality. And right now, to me, that's where Mekhi Becton is. Mekhi Becton is the guy who he can give you 95% of the game. He might be playing really well, but that 5 to 10% still exists. And those could be 3-4 pressures, 3-4 sacks. And that you just can't have that in this league. So I think that it's a major issue. I really do. And I would have told you that Saleh probably went into this second preseason game for them saying that was the goal, to solidify the offensive line. Like, this is where we're going to play the 5 guys in the spots that we believe they should go in. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully it goes well. And then we're going to play that exact same lineup in the final preseason game. So you get 2 games under your belt. And then obviously you get 1 game where Rodgers is behind him for the early portions of the game. That obviously didn't happen. So now they're going into that 3rd game, probably saying, this is it, basically. Like, whoever we throw out there as the 5 for this 3rd preseason game, that's probably who it has to be going into the regular season, whether it's to our expectations or not. So they're running out of time, man. I think the chemistry and the offensive line is huge, and it's something that they've got to get figured out, no doubt.
Now, I might be grasping at straws here. Again, I'm an optimistic guy. I look at that glass, I'm like, oh, that looks half full. Some people would say half empty. It could, because of these offensive line issues that are apparent, that we've both obviously said they're there. Aaron Rodgers' ability to get the ball out quick, could they, with him and Nathaniel Hackett, say, all right, this offensive line ain't great, so we're going to have to get rid of this ball very quickly. Can you survive with that? Or, again, is that kind of a pipe dream? Again, the offensive line is the offensive line.
No, I mean, you can, and I think that you can because the defense is that good, right? I mean, if you still have a defense that is as good as the Jets' defense is, you're hopefully limiting a lot of scoring from the other team anyways, right? So you're hoping that those longer methodical drives, lower average depth of target, lower yards per reception, like those things, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're churning out yards. If you're continuing to move the sticks, it's just a longer way to get from point A to point B to hopefully get yourself in the end zone. So all of that is possible. And Aaron Rodgers, like you mentioned, he's been around the block. He gets it. He's been in offenses where he's been throwing it down the field all the time. And then he's also been in offenses where they don't have those weapons. You know, I think that's where Garrett Wilson can really shine, right? He's a guy who is so quick off the line of scrimmage, so quick out of his releases. You can do a lot of quick game stuff with him. I think the same thing can be said with Mecole Hardman and his speed. You know, Randall Cobb and his veteran savviness for how he's getting off the line of scrimmage. Like, it just doesn't have to be this, we got to chuck it deep because the offense is supposed to be good. So I think that a world exists where they can help out their offensive line struggles. Your defense just then has to be up to the billing, right? They still have to be a fantastic unit. And I think that they're going to be. So I think that is in the cards for them. You just have less room for error when you have those lower average depth of target offenses where you're not taking as many, I don't even want to say deep shots down the field, but if you're not opening it up, right? If you're not attacking over the second level in the intermediate areas, if you're not attacking deep down the sideline, if you're not stretching the defense out, it can sometimes be a little bit more difficult for you. You know, you can stack the box a little bit more. Guys can get more aggressive towards the line of scrimmage. So it's all this ebbs and flow game, but it's possible because of the defense that they have. They just got to be really efficient with it once they come out the gate.
Speaking of possible, Trevor Sikkema, a couple of quickies. So below that handsome mug of yours, is that at Tampa Bay Trey? That's the handle?
That is indeed.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
and you have these deep ties to the Tampa Bay, community, and you've been this Bucs guy forever. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay, great. I love this game. This is fantastic. So, really, I'm going to be honest. The real reason I brought you on is not for your insights with this or other things. It is just for one purpose and one purpose alone. I need you, with that beautiful Bucs logo above you, to tell me and guarantee, quite frankly, that the New York Jets are really, and New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers are simply Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady in year one. I just need you to crown us. Say, obviously, it's going to happen. I just need you to do that here on August 16th on this show. Can you do that for me? Yeah.
I cannot do that. I've been advised by my lawyers to not say those exact words now. But look, I think that a lot of people want that to be the reality, right? A lot of people want
Sure.
that sort of success. You get the Hall of Fame quarterback, he's coming right away. But Brady does give you the blueprint to say, like, hey, it is possible, right? Sure, people look at this year and they say, oh, it's 1 year of bust for the New York Jets. I kind of think Aaron Rodgers is going to be around at least 2 years. Like, it's the same thing that I thought with Brady. Like, I thought Brady was going to be around Tampa for about I thought 3 years. There's some speculation after 2 with the retirement, and then he came back and everything. But I don't think it's all in on this year. Certainly the Jets are going to give it their all to win the Super Bowl this year, as every team does. But I think you got a 2-year window here. And so the offensive line woes, like things like that, there's reason to believe that whatever this year is, and I still think it's going to be playoffs for the Jets, but whatever it is, it can be a building block for next year to be even better. And I think that was kind of the case in Tampa too. I don't want to say they got lucky in that first year, but a lot of things went well for them, particularly in 2 areas. One, they were really healthy. They did not have many injuries, major injuries throughout the season. So the luck aspect of being healthy is huge when it comes to still playing games in January, playing games in February. Because remember this, the Bucs were a wild card team that year. They didn't even win their division. They didn't win their division until the next season.
7-5, right?
Right. So that team was not like this absolute juggernaut. They just caught fire in December, January, and February. And my second point, they were able to do that because the offensive line was healthy and they stayed together. That was a major part of the offense. Everybody looked at Brady. They looked at Leonard Fournette. They looked at Mike Evans. They looked at how great the defense was playing. That offensive line was together and playing really well the entire season. And they played their best because they had so much time together in December, in January, and in February. So, yeah, everybody focuses on the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, they're in similar spots. Those are the 2 spots that you really need to keep an eye on. Can they stay healthy? Can the offensive line hold up? Because that was really the key to the Bucs getting over the top and winning the Super Bowl that year.
Fair enough. Damn you, Trevor Sikkema, handsome lawyers that he pays a lot of money to, you bastards. Maybe I could have gotten into him last week. Speaking of all that Super Bowl jazz, though, I'm curious. We'll circle back and end with the Jets-Bucs joint practices and all that stuff. But Dalvin Cook, the Jets bring him in. They give him a bag. And I'm just curious, your national perspective, Trevor Sikkema, on that move. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Where were you?
I loved it, man. Because again, you are trying to put together the best football team that you can over the next couple of years. And if they had the money laying around to where it wasn't going to handicap them beyond this year, or instead of making addition along the offensive line or something like that, yeah, go for it. Absolutely. Because let's face it, not only are you adding Dalvin Cook, good chance you were taking him away from the Miami Dolphins, which I think is really important, right? You look at last year too, and Cook may have been a little less efficient compared to what he had been in years past in his career. But even that version of Dalvin Cook was still a top 10 running back in the league, still an incredibly talented running back. So even if you think that, oh, maybe he's not exactly at his peak, what he gave last year was good enough for the Jets to absolutely take this shot, especially with Breece Hall coming back from injury. I know people are saying oh, he's getting closer to being healthy. Why did they sign Dalvin Cook? You can never have too many good football players, okay? If the salary cap allows you to do it, and especially if you are in a winning window, go get good football players. And I think that's, I get it. Izzy Abinaconda's playing well. He's showing really nice flashes, but Dalvin Cook's been doing this for years, over 1,000 yards, so many years in the NFL. That's the security and the peace of mind that you want, as opposed to saying, hey, Izzy looks good in his first couple of preseason games. Let's hope he can be exactly what we need to spell Breece Hall, especially when we're playing games late in December, late in January. I think they know Dalvin Cook has already shown that he can do that if they get to that point. So I love the move. I really did.
Take that, PFF. Running backs are people too. Excellent. I wanted to make sure I worked that in there on the program. I'm curious if this, Trevor, I haven't talked about this with anyone else from, the opponent that the Jets have been preparing for, but these joint practices also provide a very unique opportunity to scout each other. So when that inevitable cutdown day comes, and in this particular case, I believe that's Tuesday, August 29th coming up, that all of a sudden it's a little easier to see basically the 90-man Bucs roster all trotting throughout camp like a show horse and going, oh, not bad. Okay, didn't know that one. So maybe some of those players could, when it comes to cutdown day, be interesting. Is there a lot of talent on this Bucs roster that maybe there's just so much talent that some of it may escape naturally as they cut down to 53? And who are those interesting guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's now there's a handful of guys that come to my mind. One is a more depth guy who played a decent amount last week in Marquise Watts. He's an undrafted rookie from Charlotte. I think, got 3 pressures in the very limited amount of time that he played. I mean, he was all over the field. He was absolutely killing it. A lot of their rookies, like, Savasier Dennis, Yaya Diaby, like those guys like aren't going anywhere. I would even like Trey Palmer as well. I think the wide receiver room is pretty deep in Tampa, but I don't think that they're moving on from any of those guys. They'll need all the offensive linemen that they get. So they're certainly not too deep in that area where, we see some nice offensive linemen. They're going to let them go, or they're not going to be cut, or they're going to be cut. But I don't know. I think that Watts is the guy who immediately just comes to mind as, I don't know if there's going to be enough spots on this roster for him to make it. I'm sure that they would love to like practice squad him, but through one preseason game, he was the guy who stood out to me as like, man, if he gets cut, I think some other team's going to get a really nice player.
And I can't wait for the warm embrace. Todd Bowles coming back to New York. We missed you so much, Todd Bowles, for that coming today. Joint practice, Trevor, we'll finish on that. What are you looking forward to? And, like, again, you were at that Panthers one. Did you have, like, notes to yourself, or did PFF say, hey, we want you to look out for these things? So they kind of give you guys creative liberty and say, hey, these are the things you look for when you go to a joint practice. What are those?
No, I mean, PFF was kind of just like, hey, you've kind of done this before. Just keep your eyes open. But, when I go to joint practices, I like to have an open mind. When I was working with Peter Report, we sometimes split it up like, okay, Trev, you're watching the defensive line today, because we had other writers on staff who were we were kind of able to delegate a little bit. But a lot of what I like to do naturally at these training camps is I like to see personnel packages. Like, okay, because practices is when you have the opportunity to get really creative. And so, all right, who's rotating in along the defensive line? Who's playing on the second level? Like, are they playing in an even front? Are they playing in an odd front? Like, are they stacking the line of scrimmage a lot? Do they play press? Like, are they playing off? Like, so a lot of those questions are the ones that I like to kind of answer when you get to watch practice in every single snap of it, because you get to go like, oh, okay, they've been in this personnel package quite a bit today. I wonder if this is them just trying something out, or if this is them saying, hey, we're going to do that a lot this season. So I think that part of training camp and joint practices is fun to keep track of. But what I'm looking forward to with the Jets and the Bucs is, the Bucs are sort of in a similar situation with the Carolina Panthers, where they're still trying to feel confident about their offensive line as well. And the Jets, like I said, are going to be one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. I believe Kyle Trask is going to still start against the Jets. The plan was that Mayfield was going to get that first game to start, and then Trask was going to get that second game to start. I wish it was flipped for this one. Like, I wish Mayfield was going up against the Jets, because Mayfield's biggest question marks are how he deals with pressure. Does he become this turnover machine if pressure's coming at him? And so I think we'll see, obviously, because the Jets defensive line is so deep, we will still see whenever Mayfield comes into the game, the Jets are going to be able to get after him a little bit. But that's the main thing that I'm looking for is, can the Jets have that same sort of pass rush dominance against the Bucs that they did against the Panthers?
All right. Excellent. Actually, one more, Trevor, before I get you out of here. It's been in the streets, so this is one you can crush. Speak with your, your lawyers and people off screen if you're allowed to answer this question. But a lot of Jet fans have been trying to figure out, because Aaron Rodgers gave back $30 million to the New York Jets, and one of the big things he kept talking about wasn't like a Dalvin Cook. He said, who knows what could happen around the trade deadline. He kept saying that. So fans like, we're in the boardroom, we're connecting rubber bands. Oh, who could that be? What could he be talking about? And the name that floats around a lot, and this will hurt you, I'm sure, Mike Evans. He's the name that keeps floating out there. Jets have, again, flirted with OBJ and some receivers. Is there any world in history, with him being a rental player, quote unquote, with him in the last year of his deal, that you could actually see him getting moved around the trade deadline if the Bucs are not performing the way that some people think that they can?
For everybody out there that saw the...
Yeah, okay.
What?
Yeah, please do.
I was just going to say, for everybody out there that saw the Johnny Manziel documentary, I'll quote him right here.
Okay.
Zero. No, as every single offseason.
Okay,
And
excellent.
this is not on your question at all whatsoever. I'm happy to answer it because a lot of fan bases have thought this before. Like when the Bucs were super up and down with Jameis, like once they moved on from Jameis, once they realized that wasn't going to happen, people were like, oh, okay, well, are they going to offload Evans? People have talked about it differently at different times with his contract as well. You know, like I know Jets fans have talked about it. Eagles fans have talked about it. I think Browns fans talked about it at one point. Like, just there's a lot of teams that look at Mike Evans' situation in Tampa and they go, hey, maybe they might move him because it's very logical to think that that would be the case. I let everybody know that I can say that Mike Evans will most likely retire a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Like he is beloved in that team. He is beloved in that locker room. He is beloved in that city. Ownership loves him. Management loves him. Coaches love him. I don't see a world where certainly he's going to get dealt at any point soon, but he really is a player who I think could end his career as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer start to finish.
Okay. Now, I just want to clarify that's okay. The Jets are not getting Mike Evans. They're nowhere near like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady the first year. Absolutely. Checked off all the boxes. Trevor, it's always great, in all seriousness, to catch up with you, man. Any excuse. When I saw Jets Bucks, I'm like, oh, yes, we're going to figure that puppy out. So thank you for gracing us with your presence, my man. We appreciate it.
Anytime, my friend. I'm very excited to watch the Jets this season and hopefully get to come back on here and talk about it with you. So I appreciate it, my friend.
There he is, Trevor Sikkema, the PFF NFL Stock Exchange podcast and everything else he's doing, of course, for the PFF Overlords. We love you. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.